When the new Hyundai Elantra came out, I called it the best small sedan on the market, and it genuinely was. Its reign was pretty short-lived though, and Honda's back to claim the title with a 2022 Civic that's better in every way possible. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Look, I should clear something up right out of the gate. It's not like the last Civic was a bad car, but I think its timing was, because it came out about 6 years ago and then a lot changed in a hurry shortly thereafter, and it left the Civic feeling pretty outdated. Now, that reason alone is enough to make this feel like a massive step forward, but that's not the only reason it does. This doesn't even feel like the same car at all. The last Civic and every version before that felt like an economy car because that's what the Civic is. But this is totally different. It's a lot more like Honda's interpretation of what a premium compact car would be. Now, no, you can't cross-shop this against the Mercedes A-Class and expect the same results, but there's a premium vibe here that goes beyond this interior design. It's in the ride quality itself. There's some serious substance to it. No, it's not especially heavy, but it just feels solid, and the same goes with the doors. They don't clunk like a tin toy. They actually feel pretty solid. It all lends to this nice quality, and there is a nice build quality here. The panel gaps are nice and tight. Everything looks good. There's not a whole bunch of creaking over these rough roads. It is a very well-built car, and that definitely helps. Honda says the structure of this one is a little stiffer than before, and the suspension has been tweaked a bit, so handling is a little bit better, and the same goes with ride quality. Now, I do have to say, I think the Corolla's ride is just a little bit better, but that doesn't mean this one is bad, and I would still put it up at the top of the segment. It's very smooth over these rough roads. Not a whole bunch of suspension chatter to worry about. It smooths out these bumps without a problem at all. And the steering system, well, it definitely is obvious that it's a by-wire setup. You can tell there's not a whole lot of genuine feel to it, but I actually like it, the progressiveness to it. So when you're cruising around in a parking lot or backing out of your driveway, it's gonna feel nice and light, but then when you get out on the open road, it firms up nicely, and there's not a bunch of play on center. It tracks very smoothly, and you can actually feel some resistance when you turn the wheel. And that means if you do take it out on a country road like this and push it around, well, it's going to be fun and playful. Not that I expect many people buying Civic touring trims like this one are in it for the fun factor, but it does mean that this is a great foundation for the upcoming Civic Si that's built on this platform and uses all the same mechanical components. And speaking of mechanical components, well, they're mostly the same as before in terms of what drives this one that I'm in. It is the Civic Touring, so it uses a 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder and a continuously variable automatic transmission. Now, both have been tweaked just a little bit, and it definitely shows. Output has been boosted to 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque, and the transmission has been tweaked just a bit, so the gearing's a little bit different, and you can definitely feel it. Still not my favorite transmission on the market, but at least it's not as buzzy and strained when you get on the gas. When you punch it, it actually takes off pretty nicely. And yeah, it is kind of noisy, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was. The other thing that's new for 2022, you have a sport mode now, and that just gives you a little bit of different gearing in the transmission, or kind of artificial gearing, I should say, as well as a tweaked throttle mapping for a little more punchiness when you need it. So if you want to pass slower traffic, you're not going to have any issues. And it still has that eco mode to help you save fuel, and that is the most important part of the powertrain in a car like this one. Now, it's officially rated for 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers combined, which is pretty average for this segment, but I have been doing quite a bit better than that. Earlier this week, I had it down below 6 liters per 100 kilometers, and even now, I'm still doing better than its official combined rating after a week of driving it and all of this shooting. Pretty impressed with the fuel efficiency. I do wish you could get this thing with a hybrid like you can with the Corolla, and hey, I just reviewed one of those. So you should probably watch that video and hit that subscribe button too. Now, something else you should keep in mind is that this touring trim is the only one that comes with this 1.5 liter. Well, that upcoming Civic Si as well, but that's a tuned version of this motor. The rest of the lineup, so the LX, the EX, and the Sport, they have a naturally aspirated 2 liter. Output is less, but combined fuel economy is the same. And something else that's pretty much the same no matter which trim you're talking about is advanced safety stuff. And as usual, Honda has absolutely packed this thing with its latest and greatest offerings. So you get stuff like forward collision warning with automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, and adaptive cruise control in every Civic trim. And Honda says the camera that it uses for most of that stuff up here behind the windshield, well, it has been adjusted this year and it has a wider field of view. And Honda also said that the steering and brake feel for the adaptive cruise control has been tweaked a bit to make it feel more natural, and I would have to agree. Now, it's not quite as smooth as a system like Nissan's Pro Pilot Assist that you can get in the Rogue, but it's a lot nicer than it used to be, and the same goes with the forward collision warning. Honda systems are notoriously sensitive. They will beep and flash at you like crazy in city traffic when you're not even that close to the person in front of you. That's not the case here. I really do like the adjustments that have been made. And then in terms of safety stuff, the only thing that's different at the top of the lineup is this touring trim. Well, it has low speed reverse automatic braking. So that means if you're in a parking lot and you start to back out of a spot and somebody crosses past behind you, it will hit the brakes if it doesn't think you are going to be able to slow down in time. And then the same goes with the rear cross traffic alert. Now, that's a little bit weird to me that this is the only trim that comes with it, but that is something to note as well, that you get blind spot monitoring in every Civic, but this is the only one that has rear cross traffic alert as well. And then in terms of creature comforts, there is some good stuff here, but it's a lot of what you would expect in a modern compact car. So you get heated front seats, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, all that safety gear I talked about, a touchscreen infotainment system. It's a decent selection. There's also power windows and locks, obviously, as well as a push button start and proximity sensors on the front doors, so you can lock and unlock the car without taking the fob out of your pocket or purse. It is very cool, and it's not something you usually see at such a low price point. And then if you move up from there, you get stuff like a sunroof, alloy wheels, and a heated steering wheel. But this touring trim is really where you get the good stuff. The cabin mostly looks the same no matter which trim you're talking about, but this touring really does tie it all together with this leather upholstery. And on top of that, there's tons of great stuff. A 12-speaker stereo, a wireless phone charger, heated rear seats, wireless smartphone connections, and this 9-inch touchscreen instead of a 7-inch one. And the interface, way better than the last one. It's really an evolution of the Accord system. So you have these tile icons that make it look and feel like a smartphone, plus these programmable shortcuts along the bottom, and I love that. And overall, the cabin is a shorter step below the A-Class than you might think. Just take a look at this honeycomb mesh that spans the dash. I love the way it looks, and it's also so cool the way it integrates the HVAC vents, so they feel like they're part of the design instead of an afterthought. And then on top of that, there are tons of soft touch points in here, and all the plastic on the high contact areas, it's textured instead of glossy, and that means no fingerprints or dust. The trunk's about the same size as the Elantras or the Corolla, so nothing all that special, but it is a nice amount of cargo room. And even though the hinges are exposed, they're not quite as big as those two cars, so you don't have to worry about them cutting into room as much. And then the same goes with this cabin. It's a decent size for the segment. Now, outright volume, not quite as much as the Elantras, but this is actually a little bit wider, and it doesn't feel cramped at all. If you take a look, I have just enough headroom with this sunroof, and that's not the case in the Corolla, so I'm happy in here that I'm comfortable. I don't feel like my neck is cricked to the side or that I have to slouch in my seat. I can sit upright, and that means great outward visibility. And then the second row is decently roomy too. There's not quite as much headroom as you get in the Elantra, but it's roomy enough for me to sit back there. There's a good amount of headroom. And don't forget, once you move up to the top trim, you also get heated rear seats. So if you are a rideshare driver, that's gonna keep those ratings up, and you're gonna like to see that. And there's a bunch of other stuff that I talked about earlier, that 12-speaker stereo, this 9-inch touchscreen infotainment system. And I do need to give a special shout out. The volume knob, yeah, it's back, and so are tune buttons. I love to see that. Honda went away from that for a bit, but it finally listened to all the complaints. That is very nice to see inside of this car. Everything else about it, very user-friendly as well. And the same goes with just accessing this car. Again, it's a compact, but it doesn't feel like that when you're getting in. That I very much like. The door openings are nice and wide, so it doesn't feel like you're getting into some low-slung car. Again, it's just those little improvements that have made it a better experience. So here's the only dilemma, the price, because the 2022 Civic starts at about 26 grand before tax if you include the freight fee. If you take a look at the Elantra, it's right around 20 grand, and the Corolla is 21,000 bucks before tax. Now, granted, those both have manual transmissions. You can't get one in this. You only get the CVT. But once you add the CVT to both of those, they're still thousands of dollars less than this. And that is a bit of a problem here, and up the next two trims from base as well. But this top trim is where you start to see some serious value. It's still more expensive than those other cars. I think it's right around 32 grand before tax. That's a lot of money for a compact car, but it actually feels like there's good value here. It's not just the design, it's not just this interior, it's everything about this car. It's the total package, the way it all comes together. I seriously think Honda has hit a home run with this thing. And if you're shopping for a small sedan, it would be silly not to take this out for a spin at the very least. To recap, I like the look of this cabin as well as the Civic's improved powertrain and the nice ride quality. I don't like that it's a little pricey compared to its rivals and that the adaptive cruise control isn't especially smooth, but that's about it. You know, in a lot of ways, this 11th gen Civic really is a return to glory for this small sedan. The technology, the safety stuff, the design, it's like Honda really put an emphasis on getting this thing back to the top of the segment, not just in terms of sales, but as far as substance too. You know, there aren't many universal truths in the auto industry, but I've got one for you now. The Civic's back, and it's better than ever.